I was actually glad the book ended in 1984, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was the really, I think I picked up where Ed left off in terms of saying, his example was that we were actually happier playing in clubs than we were when we hit the so-called big time. Because in the clubs, you weren't quite sure what you were doing. You could, at the drop of a hat, change directions. You can play anything you want, and there's nobody holds you accountable, or they have expectations of any sort. You just go in and you play, and it's intimate. You're right there, 2 feet away. People are right there in front of your face. And that kind of goes away when you get to the place where you have 5 lines of security people, and we always kept it to a minimum, but nonetheless, that was the soup du jour.
Did you feel the same way?
Oh yeah, well I am behind the drums, so I'm fine.
You know,
Multi-purpose.
Al, we're going to start the interview now. So my initial reaction reading this book was, it was a very sweet story.
I tried to incorporate Ed's way of looking at the world and expressing himself outside of music, and how Ed and I kind of navigated everything in our life. And it was always at the core was music, but obviously there's much more to life than just music. And I shouldn't say just music, but when Ed passed, it came at the dying young is never a good idea, right? But in Ed's case, it was particularly difficult because it was at the height of COVID. So we didn't really have the opportunity to get close enough and hold him while we were talking to him. He was behind a thing, or we were in a hazmat suit, or there had to be some distance because his immunity was down so low that, God forbid, one of us should end up spreading something to him. So I never really got to say goodbye, Ed. We had a good time. I think when you have a career as long as us, maybe you shouldn't call it a career, but a lifetime in music, in the back of your head, you always think we're going to sit on top of the hill and we're going to congratulate each other and say, hey, Ed, we didn't do too bad, huh? But we never got to do that.
So was this book a form of maybe, like a cathartic approach to you dealing with his death?
Yeah, it's the things that we never had a chance to really say, even though in the daily, the course of a day, you don't really share that much in terms of personal convictions or feelings about things, because you're too busy trying to make the whole thing. Your job is to perform that night, and everything revolves around that. So you're not going to say, hey, Ed, stop playing for a second. I got to tell you how much I love you. That doesn't quite cut it. Besides, you don't want to show any of that in front of the other guys, because then they really got you.
But the book does describe this unbreakable bond that you would expect from two brothers. But I think what was really unique about your story was that you didn't really have the necessarily Orthodox upbringing.
It was Orthodox as far as we were concerned. We had nothing to compare it to. This is our normal. Dad comes home at 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk as a skunk, and makes a lot of noise, wakes everybody up in the house. And then at 6 o'clock we get up and we got to do the same thing. And now it's time to go to rehearsal. And you learn to be grateful for everything that comes your way, but at the same time you also recognize that it could be taken away at any minute, any moment. I think probably the most important lesson we learned from our dad was that you can always make it work. His favorite expression was, make something out of it. Even if there's very little, you got to make something out of it, which of course segues into the part of the reason why Ed was always redesigning the guitars, is because we couldn't afford the things that we wanted. You had to use something that was already used and make something out of it.
You immediately went to your father, but in the book you claim your mother was responsible for your musical drive.
Oh yeah, no, she was the disciplinarian. In part it was because she came from a colonial background, and when the people of Indonesia reclaimed their land, so to speak, they kicked everybody out. I mean, all the Caucasian people who they saw as the oppressor. I don't want to make this too dark, but yeah, she was the one. For her to gain acceptance in life was to be disciplined and to have a job where you have to wear a shirt and a tie, you know, and that kind of thing. That meant success to her. I think until the very end, she never really acknowledged that we were actually doing something. You know, you could have went to visit her, Alex, why don't you wear a suit? Okay, Mom, whatever.
Coming here, you know, when you guys were back in Denmark, you didn't have television.
Holland.
Oh, excuse me, Holland.
That's okay.
Yeah. When you guys were in Holland, you didn't have television. You just had your instruments.
Right.
By the time you came here, you and Ed, how good at piano were you guys?
Well, you know, you only have your parents to kind of to fill your head full of whatever it is. Our mother thought we were the greatest thing since sliced bread, you know. And then once you get out in the real world and you start looking around, don't lie to yourself, okay? We're very good, but we ain't great. So maybe we should think about doing something else. But because it represented what she thought was important in life, we did it anyway. And you know, our dad drove us all the way down to San Pedro, which is 3 times a week we had to go down there. And it was mind-bending. But you didn't know any better, you know? So it was okay.
And at some point, both you and Ed felt piano wasn't cool anymore.
No, when the Beatles came and it started becoming very popular, Ed and I looked at each other. I mean, this is what we should be doing, right? Look at these guys getting all the girls. And it was very. I mean, what part can't you understand? It's everything that we were taught about what music is really all about, which is not the notes. It's about everything else. It's about a human connection. It's about generating excitement. It's about sharing with people. That's what music is all about. It's not about these little notes that says you sit in some sterile room, you know, playing and everything picture perfect. No, that's not what it's about.
What I found awfully fascinating was the fact that when you guys decided to switch instruments, he went to the drums and you went to guitar.
Yes, no, it's the other way around. In the book, I don't want to make it too serious, but it was serious. It's that when Ed picked up the guitar, he made music. When I played it, I was just playing chords, and you know, everybody else could do the same thing. It's no big deal. But when Ed played, the vibration of it was much more pure, and I can't explain it other than I think many people can hear it while he's playing. You know, he spent his whole life perfecting and making the intonation of the instrument remain more true than the way they used to come from the store, and that's quite a challenge because the depending on how deep you want to get into it, you know, the AA or A at 440, that was a Freudian slip. A at 440 is not the real pitch, just so you know.
But he even expresses that you were better at drums.
Yeah, it's. I think we gravitated to the instrument that was meant to be, if you will, and I'm not going to argue that. I like playing drums. The drummer can work almost anywhere, from vaudeville to strip shows, you name it. You know, you only need a drummer and a girl dancing, and you're in business. But primarily also because our dad would drag us along to his gigs. And when there was an opportunity, he would get us to play as either the freak show or just to learn something as you're doing it. And the drums were, as far as I was concerned, much more available because all you have to do is groove. You know, swing the band, and you're in. That's it. Keep your eyes open, watch what they're doing, and that's it. But the guitarist had to learn the charts. He had to. I mean, it was a lot more complicated than the drums. So, but that's I like the drums because when I saw the Beatles, I saw Ringo, and that's the joking part of it because the band that really kicked it up for us was Dave Clark 5. Those old records, the way he overplayed with that snare drum it was incredible. We loved it.
You also talk about your early introduction to Dave and how, for multiple reasons, he was not a great fit for your band.
Originally, no, because he really had no interest in the same music that we did. But if you're living in a town where by the time you're 16, 17, or 18, all the kids go away to go to college, the ones who can afford it, or you go to war, whatever, we were the only ones who were left. So after the first the first try of getting it together, we tried one more time, and our minds were in the same space, if you will, if that makes sense, because again, music is not about music, it's about people. That's what I think was the big misunderstanding with all of it, and Dave connected with us in that sense. For whatever reason, he was also an outsider, and it worked really well, and he was very disciplined, and not afraid to work. Now, the rest of it was.
But do you think all these alpha male personalities, do you think that was the reason for the success of the band?
Well, we were all, egomaniacs to some degree, overly confident. Until you find out maybe you're not as good as you think you are. Then you plow right through it. This is the way we make a living, right? Everybody gets scared. Everybody, doesn't want to try certain things, but you better do it or you ain't going to eat. That was literally the driving force for us. And of course, one thing led to another. As we progressed through the hierarchy of the status in the bands, it coincided with the touring industry becoming more organized, and then MTV came, and so there were a number of things that were all happening at the same time that helped facilitate where we wanted to be. But all you really had to do was look at the people who came before you, who is successful, who is doing what you think you'd like to do, and how do you make that work for you? And that goes back to being an immigrant. You try to fit in, and how do you make this work? You had the Stones, you had Zeppelin, you had the Beatles. Cream, yeah. Those guys were playing, they were improvising at such a high intensity. They only lasted three records, right? People don't really remember that. It was only 3 records they made, 3 or 4 at the most, and then it fell apart. You cannot perform at that level every night or whatever the touring schedule demands and not end up with something being, exploding. It's a tense situation, and most of it's your own gauge of how you think you should be performing.
So while Ed was idolizing Clapton, were you a Ginger Baker guy?
Oh yeah. I never heard. Of course, this is because we didn't have the internet. We had that record that had the drum solo on it, and I thought it was the most magnificent thing I'd ever heard. Now, of course, going back, you can hear Art Blakey. There's a list of people this long, right? Who did something similar, but he happened to be in the right place at the right time, and he had commitment. That's what I thought was the most fascinating thing. When he played with Fela Kuti in Africa, this guy gets into a Range Rover and starts driving from England all the way to Africa. I mean, what the hell? That's commitment, right?
Well, you discuss commitment, and I think the book really conveys the level of commitment you guys had, because I mean, even at 16 years old, you're comparing your careers to Stevie Winwood, saying he was already a success at this age.
Correct.
We're already behind.
Right, that's correct.
And you say that Dave had that same mentality as well.
We knew it was going to take a lot of hard work, and we knew it was going to be involve a lot of luck. And there's the old expression, it's amazing how much more luck I have the harder I work. So we're well aware of what it takes, and because music and the perception of what you're doing is something that's malleable and bendable, and your perception can be skewed a little bit, you have to constantly adjust and adapt to what's going on around you. Otherwise, you do turn into a block of concrete. It doesn't work that way. You need to be constantly, I don't want to use the word evolving, but you need to change. If you listen to the lyrics of Unchained, the first thing he says is change, nothing stays the same. I don't know if he was aware of it, but that's from the I Ching, right? I thought it was brilliant, but I didn't want to tell him that because that'd be the last time we'll ever get a voice in this band. But those things, just if you keep your eyes and ears open, it's an amazing way to live a life. You have to be receptive to not only what's going on around you, but what people are up to and what their tastes. And it's so many things that I can't even put it in one conversation.
When I initially said that this was a sweet story, what I really loved about it was, fans are always looking for little nuggets, a little insight into the band. And, nobody had more of a front row seat to Ed's career than you. And I mean, even like little stories like, you win your first tickets to a concert and it's Eric Clapton in Pasadena at the Civic Center and 6th row seats, Ed brings his binoculars to still study them.
And that's absolutely true. I'm looking at Ed going, Ed, are you out of your mind? But yeah, that's the fascination. I mean, that we had with the old expression, you build on the shoulder of giants. Well, these guys are about as big as you can get, but it was a different band. It was already Cream was already done, and Clapton had been playing with.
Dark and the Dominoes?
Yes.
Yeah. But did you have to tap into these memories? I mean, what did you have to do? Or were these stories you just told throughout your life?
We were hungry. The only way that you're going to really see what's going on is get over there and take a look.
But what about you writing this book? Reflecting on all these stories from your childhood.
It was not easy. It's not easy because rather than being cathartic, it just kind of it drove it in deeper. It was very painful in parts. In part because, I think a lot of people are aware of it. Ed went too soon, in my opinion. I'm not the man upstairs. I don't make the decisions and all that. But nonetheless, if I had my way, I'd bring him back for a couple more years. Let's go fishing or let's go do something together.
Would there be a tour?
I probably wouldn't. Would probably not be musical. The fact that we were brothers overrides the career. It overrides what we did for a living. Because ultimately, you can convince people that this is your life, and it's a way to make a living for us. It's the way to put food on the table. If you don't perform up to the standard of where you're hired to play, you ain't gonna eat. And that's the hard lesson that most people don't understand. Yes, it was nice to have all the success. Yeah, it was great that people idolize the band and whatnot, but the reality is it's a discipline and it's a career and it's a job. That's what's important. But it's so easy because of all the people around to tell you, oh, you're the best, you're the greatest, you're so. You see a lot of these people fall by the wayside because they listen to that, and that's too bad. Because at the essence is there is a real, undisputed talent in there that needs to get out. It wants expression. That's what's important. Excuse me.
So when you were writing this, was it more of something that was just flowing from your heart, or were you thinking of what do fans want to hear?
No, that's what I wanted to say. I think playing into people's expectations is probably the worst thing you can do for a number of reasons. if you miscalibrate what they expect, then it's not going to work. And if it fails, now you're doubly screwed because now you not only did you not get to do what you wanted to do, you played into the hand of the not the audience, but of other people. It's so difficult to explain. You're there to make the people happy, but you also got to do your own thing. That's the 50-50 kind of deal, if you will, between the audience and the band.
Not 51-50. No, I'm kidding.
That's actually,
the penal code for, yeah, I know.
It adds up to more than 100. That's the only reason we did that. The psychology of it all is there are so many people who try to explain all this. I just read a thing, Bob Dylan was talking about he's got an amazing career, right? And when he listens to the old stuff that he started off with, he goes, I was in a different place. I don't know where it came from. I listen to it now and go, wow, that is pretty incredible. It's almost like there's a different entity or a different dimension that you go into. And almost every major artist who's been around for a long time will say that at some point, that's where they went. And that ultimately is the thing that draws you back in every time, right? Until one day, it doesn't happen anymore.
The way you describe that, I'm envisioning the multiple chapters of Van Halen. Why did you make the conscientious decision to stop the book in 1984?
Because the original band was the band that was the driving force. That was the connection between the disparate parts of the musical world, if you will. And we were young. we were the first record going platinum. It's incredible. That's something you can really never expect to happen again. It was later on. That's for another book. But the excitement and the confusion and the groping in the dark, if you will, and all the mistakes that we made and all the BS we had to endure, and then to recognize at the very end, maybe we had one more record in us. It was very. You can't take it back, but those are the things that are in the back of your head. The old expression of if you don't go over the edge, then you can't come back. You have to go too far to come back in. Does that make sense? Unfortunately, we're human and we have made some bad choices. It's the US Festival, for instance, was just a clusterfuck. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. All we said was, you make sure you have enough power and we'll play. That's it.
In a sense, though, isn't that true rock and roll?
Bingo. That's exactly right. You just hit the nail on the head. After that, that's why the book ends with in 1984, because that was true rock and roll. After that, it became much more, I don't know, I can't explain it, but it's not to say that it was not any good. We always did our best at whatever we were doing, but it wasn't the same.
All throughout the success and everything, did the relationship between you and Ed always stay consistent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was very early on. Our dad taught us, you better stick together, man, or they're gonna ream your ass. Because you're not only dealing with the band members and their perception of what's going on, and everybody makes bad choices, but when you do 3 in a row, kind of let's pull back a little bit. And there are business issues, and there just aren't enough hours in the day, and that's what's frightening about when you see these young people go into this line of work. You better have some good representation and people that you can trust, which is kind of an oxymoron.
So I kind of
look what I got for you.
While we change this angle, I kind of want to just maybe rehash on some things.
Sure.
So the book takes us right from the start, right from the birth.
Yeah.
You're born, Ed's born.
Yep.
And you're not born in this country.
No. And again, you don't know any different, but we actually grew up in what I would kind of loosely interpret as post-World War II Holland. The memories, the conversations and the memories of the war were constantly a topic of discussion. That and the television would show old war footage, and even from our house, you could look across, you could see houses that had not been rebuilt after they were bombed. So, you grew up in kind of a strange environment, if you will, but it's all we knew. Plus, by the time we were in Holland, our parents were biracial, so that was a problem for my mother, because the colonialization of Indonesia was to get minerals and all kinds of wealth out of the country, and then when the white people got kicked out, she had to come move to Holland with my dad, and the shoe was on the other foot. It was not good for her. It was, it was very painful to watch her being. I wouldn't call it abused, but people give her a hard time, and yet they treat you as a second-class citizen, which didn't help, because my dad was a musician and they drank a lot, so that automatically you're a second-class citizen.
And your mom had a sister living in the United States at the time, Los Angeles.
Yes.
Where it seemed like it was greener pastures.
The first thing I remember is oranges for a penny apiece. Okay, there's a reason to move. Let's pack up and let's go.
And your family was all for it.
Yeah, we did it. But that was because our dad never had any apprehension or anxiety about any of it. He said, as long as I got this, which is the saxophone and clarinet, he says, we're good.
And what about you and Ed?
Huh?
What about you and Ed at that time?
We were playing piano. It was classical piano.
Did you have apprehension to come to the United States?
No. Because you pick it up from your parents. The psychiatrist will tell you, after lengthy studies, if you just keep your eyes open, you can watch what's going on. That's why it's so important that when you're in front of your kids, you don't act like a lunatic. Wait a minute. Did I just say that? No, it was truly an adventure. You know, they painted this picture of. I kept thinking that California was like mayonnaise. Don't ask me why, but it was a word with a Y, and we're going to California. Where is that? I don't know, but let's do it. And so we did. We sold everything. We took the piano and the clarinet and the saxophone. That was it. Done.
And then
$25.
And then once you were introduced to American culture, that's when you discovered there was more than just a piano.
Oh yeah. Oh man. It was an overload. You know, Holland is just, and I said in the book, it's just relentlessly gray. Now, I know a lot of people from Holland are going to call me and say, "Man, it's not like that all the time." Well, yes, it is. I talk to my cousin twice a week, and it's always either raining or gray. That's on the North Atlantic, right? So to come to California and have it warm and colorful and just the smell of the flowers and the tropical kind of vibe, that was it. We're here, Ed. This is it. We don't need anything else. So.
And I had mentioned this before, but readers really get an insight of what it was like growing up in your household.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, because our dad was a musician, you know, he wasn't always there. Sometimes he'd be gone for a week or two, and you know, nobody worried because we know where he's at. He was in the military, so you kind of have a safety net. You know, kind of where he's at, and he had to go out and make a living. Until one day, you know, when we came to America, he was pulled over the guys he was working with were smoking. Can I say that now?
You said it in the book.
Okay, they were smoking dope. and you know, back then, this stuff was harmless. You know, you could smoke a pound of it and you could still function. But they got pulled over at about 2 a.m. in the morning because he was working the swing shift, and they took him in to Central Men's Jail of downtown LA. Day goes by, 2 days go by, 3 days go by. You know, my mom says to get kind of worried. I'm a little worried about where your dad is. I said, 2 weeks go by and nobody says anything. And then when we finally found out where he was, my mom's sister says, you know, you can bail him out. She says, what is that? And why did you wait so long to tell us, you know? So there was kind of a not so subtle kind of get the white guy. So, but she married a white guy too, so what the hell, right? It's always a competition with these folks. I mean, I know competition is a human trait, but that's not cool. So, but when he got out, that was it. It cost us, at that time, $300 is a lot of money in lawyer fees to get him off.
But your dad also, you know, kind of raised you to be tough. I mean, you know, you guys are teenagers and he's introducing you to cigarettes and booze.
Oh yeah, I was 6 years old when I started smoking. once a week, you know. I mean, it wasn't like a regular thing. But that was only to placate us, and he didn't know. Your mom goes out, and what's he supposed to do? He's not a babysitter, so he gives me he actually was a meerschaum pipe, I still remember that, and a shot of some kind of liquor. And I didn't really care for it other than the effect that it had. This was kind of fascinating. I learned early on, stay away from this. There's something wrong with there's something like that can make you feel good. It can't be good. But yeah, our dad was he was just a regular rough and tumble kind of guy, like most people were during that era. And he was so relaxed about it, you know. Effectively, okay. It's not about hurting people. The most well-known martial artist is probably Bruce Lee, and he said, if you ever get on the street and you want to get into a fight, run, okay? Because you don't know if they have a weapon or if whatever. It's not about fighting. The actual techniques and the things you do are a representation of Taoism, flowing energy and redirecting it, all those things. Other than that, you know, he'll be the first to tell you, don't ever get into a street fight.
All right.
That's after the movies.
So Al, the book again focuses on the early years and what it took to form this. The book again focuses on the early years of what it took to form this band, and the book points out that David Lee Roth wasn't necessarily the right choice in the very beginning.
That's exactly right, and it took us a while to recognize and the value of having opposing viewpoints because, again, Ed and I we grew up on a steady diet of Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Cream, you name it, the rock and roll bands of the time, and you can't help but get that into your DNA, if you will. The more you're exposed to it, the more they call it immersion now, but. So we were renting Dave's PA, and every time we had a gig, we got to pay him like $30, $25, and we're looking at Ed. We could save $25 if we just get him in the band, right? I'm kind of making light of it, but that was sort of one of the things that helped us decide the whole thing. And at that age, when you have to go somewhere, you got to have a vehicle. He had a vehicle, so. But having said that, the most striking thing, the thing that struck me the most in the beginning was the fact that he was willing to work as hard as we were. That really was the common denominator. After the first audition, which didn't really go too well, Ed left the room. I'm sitting there with my you-know-what in my hand, and with all due respect, Dave, this isn't going to work, okay? Let's maybe some other time. And then we parted ways. A couple of years later, the most memorable part was we were at his house. We didn't play any music. We just talked. By the end of the evening, okay, Dave, you're in. Let's give it a whack. My takeaway was anybody who can convince me that he should be in the band can convince anybody, okay? To me, it's a no-brainer, Ed. And so we said, yeah, let's do it.
What overall are you hoping that readers get out of this book?
I think a dimension of a perception of Ed. Ed's always connected with the stuff that we did on stage, and I mean, to this day, people are taking apart what he played and how he played. You'll never figure it out because Ed didn't play that way. He never played the same thing twice, and it was just it flowed through him. He'd be the first to tell you. He didn't know where it came from. You just have to have the machine running, and then you catch it. But the takeaway is that obviously, when you're in the limelight, everything you do gets magnified or distorted, and for selfish reasons, whatever happens, that's not Ed. Ed was a fucking angel. Can I say that word?
We could bleep it.
He was, but even angels make mistakes. That's all. He just wanted to play. That's it. And so when I got together with Ariel, my first thing I said to him, all we ever wanted to do is play. And she goes, well, that doesn't make a book.
But it kind of did.
Yeah, bingo. You're right. That is exactly right. And it was really that simple.
That's basically what you get out of the book. Two kids who just wanted to play.
That's it. Yeah.
And fame happened to come along.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, the next book, I'm going to call you.